The top 5 worst hurricanes of all time. Every year, the arrival of hurricane season brings about fear and at times even panic for the millions of people and the hundreds of cities that might potentially be impacted. We know how bad some storms have been recently, and there is always the threat that we may be hit again. But just how bad can a giant storm be? Here are the top 5 worst hurricanes in recorded history. Number 5, Hurricane Katrina, 2005. When most people think about the devastating hurricanes of our history, the name that most often comes to mind is Katrina. Yet a great cause of the death and destruction from this storm was not the typical windstorm-related perils. Once Katrina reached the city, the rising water topped over New Orleans' system of levees, which caused them to break and flood the streets. Ultimately, 80% of New Orleans was underwater. Hurricane Katrina claimed 1,833 lives, 40% of which were caused from drowning. Furthermore, 400,000 people were displaced from the city to other cities, such as Houston, and many have yet to return. According to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Katrina was the single most catastrophic natural disaster in U.S. history. Number 4, Hurricane Maria, 2017. This was a particularly bad year for Atlantic hurricanes. Hurricane Maria was the second Category 5 storm of the 2017 storm season, and it struck Puerto Rico just 2 weeks after Hurricane Irma, the other Cat 5 storm, had devastated much of the island, leaving around 80,000 still without power. Maria passed through much of the same areas as Irma had. It struck Dominica on September 18th. Then it moved on to Guadalupe and the U.S. Virgin Islands before demolishing Puerto Rico. There has been much controversy over the official death toll for Hurricane Maria. In August of 2018, the government of Puerto Rico revised the number as 2,975. Number 3, the Galveston Hurricane of 1900. At the turn of the century, the city of Galveston was a thriving port city, with an infrastructure and population which made it the 4th largest municipality in the state of Texas at that time. In September of 1900, the inhabitants of this flourishing city had no idea what was about to hit them. This was obviously a time before any tracking system would have been able to recognize a giant storm was coming. What did come was the deadliest hurricane in U.S. history. It is estimated that anywhere from 6,000 to 12,000 lives were lost from this storm. The Galveston hurricane was a Category 4 storm, which carried 20-foot storm surges and a force and persistency which brought flash flooding all the way up to Oklahoma and Kansas after it pounded through Texas. The damages in Galveston totaled $30 million and prompted the city to construct a great wall up its coastline in order to offset the potential devastation of future storms. Number 2, Hurricane Mitch, 1998, Honduras and Nicaragua. When many people attempt to rank the worst storms of the past few decades, Hurricane Mitch is often overlooked. However, this hurricane, which struck Honduras and Nicaragua in 1998, was the second deadliest hurricane of all time. The horrors of Mitch was due to the fact that it was an extremely slow-moving storm. It stalled and set on Honduras for 2 entire days, bucketing up to 4 inches of rain an hour for the 48-hour period, producing unimaginable floods and mudslides. It has been estimated that approximately 11,000 died with countless thousands missing. Honduras suffered more than $5 billion in damages, and a great deal of the country's crops and infrastructure were totally destroyed. Hurricane Mitch is considered the deadliest hurricane to strike the Western Hemisphere in over 200 years. A single mudslide alone killed over 2,000 people in Nicaragua. Number 1. The Great Hurricane of 1780. The surviving accounts of the Great Hurricane of 1780 detail a storm of legendary devastation, death, and terror. This, like the Hurricane of Galveston in 1900, was obviously at a time before radar or any indication or warning that a giant storm was approaching. The inhabitants, settlers, and visitors of these unfortunate islands were thus utterly unprepared for the plummeting wind and devastation that wreaked havoc for nearly an entire week. It is estimated that this storm killed approximately 22,000 people in total, making it the deadliest hurricane of all time. Among the casualties of this harrowing storm were American and British soldiers who had been battling in warships in the American Revolutionary War. The storm lasted 6 days, nearly an entire week, and it plowed through many islands of the Caribbean, including Barbados and St. Lucia. One account of the Great Hurricane of 1780 details that the wind was so intense that it stripped bark straight off the trees. Just imagine what it must have been like to be caught in a storm of such magnitude with virtually no warning whatsoever. Thank you for watching this video about the top 5 worst hurricanes of all time. If you'd like to watch more interesting videos like this one, please subscribe by hitting the red button below and go ahead and hit the bell. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.